Hi. My name is Diana. It's been a long time. I don't want to make this video too long, so I don't want to talk about why I was gone for so long, because I feel like that's a very long explanation. But essentially I was just having a really hard time with personal things in my life when I left YouTube like a year ago. The point of time that I was in my life was just really hard for me, so I thought it was best to take a break. The first thing I just kind of wanted to bring up was, I know I kind of fast forwarded and just skipped all of nursing school, which was the bulk of this channel, and I want to be able to give you guys the opportunity to ask me questions. If you want certain videos from me about any aspect of school, whether that's studying, clinicals, how testing was going, how COVID changed things, everything switching to online. If you have any specific questions about school, leave that down below, because I'm kind of just going, from now on, I'm going to be moving on to where I am currently in my life, which is NCLEX and job stuff. So if you want me to backtrack it, I totally will. Just leave your questions or video recommendations down below and I can definitely do that for you. But anyways, for the sake of this video, I'm going to be talking about the NCLEX. So I wanted to make this its own separate video because I wanted to kind of tell you my story of what it was like for me to take the NCLEX, and kind of a story timeline of all of the events that took place leading up to my NCLEX. So I actually made a timeline in my notes section that I wanted to follow to begin. Just to preface this video, from the time that I graduated to the time that I took my NCLEX, it was about 1 month. I feel like 1 to 2 months is totally normal for someone to take their NCLEX. I personally didn't want to wait too long because I felt like fresh out of nursing school, I was retaining the most information and I remembered the most, so I didn't want to lose it the longer I waited. However comfortable you feel, you are the best judgment of how ready you are and how prepared you feel, and ultimately it is your decision. But generally speaking, from what I've seen from my friends, we've taken it between 1 to 2 months post-graduation. So before I graduated, our school gave us a step-by-step registration process that we had to go through. We had to register through the state, we had to get fingerprinted, and then send all that information to continental testing like Illinois State Board. And then after all of that, we had to register with Pearson, and that's where we took our NCLEX through, is our registration through Pearson. If you are curious, I know this varies by state. For the whole registration process, I paid a little under $400. That is very state specific. I live in the state of Illinois. It's going to depend on where you live, but my registration through the state of Illinois was $98. My fingerprinting was, I think it was $75. And then I had to get that UPS, like priority shipped to continental testing, which was like $12. And then I had to buy the Pearson registration, which was $200. So all of that, and plus tax and everything, it was a little under $400. So all of this I did before I graduated. So from the time that I finished my registration process to the time that I graduated, I was waiting for all of these places to get the form they needed. My school had to send my transcripts and send them like a certification of completion telling the state that I did pass and that I have my BSN so that I'm eligible to sit for the NCLEX. I was just waiting for my graduation so that I can finish my finals and that the school can send all of this information and kind of verify everything, and then I can wait for my authorization to test. Now, the school kind of estimated when we would receive our authorization to test, and they told us that the soonest we should expect to take the NCLEX was mid-February, and at this time it was like beginning of December. So I was just waiting for that authorization to test, and that is coming from Pearson because that is who we registered with for the NCLEX. On December 8th was my last final, so technically I was done with school after that final, and I had nothing left for school to do. All of my assignments were turned in, I had nothing left. So December 8th I considered myself done and graduated. So the next thing that we had to do is my school offered an ATI comprehensive live review, and this is a Zoom call. It was over a 3-day period and it was from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So this took place on December 14th, 15th, and 16th, and my school partners with ATI, and we were given this book, and it's just a comprehensive book that we needed for that live review. It was a really good summary. We basically went through this entire book, your entire nursing program, in 3 days. Our proctor just highlighted all of the most important things that you should be focusing on, the big system, the key ideas from every system, from every subject. I had my book out with me throughout that entire time, and I was just making notes as we literally went page by page through everything. You name it, it's all in this little condensed book. And they also provided us little worksheets as we went through certain things like diabetes. We had some med stuff. And yeah, so that was our ATI comprehensive live review. After our comprehensive review, we had an ATI comprehensive predictor exam. And I took this on December 18th, which is the Friday of the same week that I had my live review. It is 180 questions, NCLEX styled, it's proctored. You had to download like a proctor to use with ATI. It shuts down your entire computer and you basically cannot navigate outside of it. And up at this point, I had not studied whatsoever. Once I graduated, I took a mental break, no studying. And from that exam, I was predicted a 97% chance of passing on my first attempt on the NCLEX. I felt pretty dang good at that point. I was feeling really good about myself. So after that predictor, I then bought UWorld. UWorld, I'm sure if you are in the nursing realm, you've heard of UWorld. It's basically just a large question bank that you can use, and I've heard it's the most similar to the NCLEX. Now, there's different packages at UWorld. I ended up getting, I think it was a 90-day access period for the question bank, and then I also bought the 2 assessments. Total, it was about $200 for that package, but there is a cheaper one and there is more expensive ones. It is the weekend after my ATI review. From here into the rest of December, I basically just did UWorld. I did not open this book again until much later. Now, because we were told that we wouldn't get our authorization to test until like mid-February, I was kind of just cruising. I wasn't really pressured because I didn't think I would be testing for another month or 2. So I was honestly just doing some maintenance work with UWorld. I wasn't even studying for very long. I wasn't sitting down and studying. I was basically, if I was bored on my phone, I would pull up my UWorld app and just do like a 20 question quiz, and that's it. It was also really awesome that UWorld has an app, because a lot of the time that I did my UWorld question sets was when I was walking or doing cardio at the gym. I would just pull out my phone and then I would forget that I was doing cardio because I was just focused on my UWorld. But I would say I did take it slow with UWorld, and I read every single rationale. If I got it wrong or if I got it right, I would read everything that it told you because I felt like that's how I was learning the best way. That was the rest of my December, and to my surprise, on December 31st, we got our authorization to test. I remember I was at my boyfriend's house, I was brushing my teeth, and I opened my email and I saw my authorization to test and I freaked out. I went on Pearson and I was looking at the dates, and just from mental note, I had always just imagined myself testing mid-February or like beginning to mid-February. That's kind of where I felt comfortable at the time. I don't know what was wrong, or if there's just a lot of people that graduated during this period of time that there was like 0 testing dates. So I ended up choosing at a state testing center. I scheduled in Indiana, which was about an hour and a half, 2-hour drive from my house, but I got the dates more close aligned to what I had originally wanted. So my first NCLEX date that I scheduled on December 31st was for February 20th in Indiana. That first week of January, again, I didn't really study that much. I was kind of doing the same thing that I was doing before, just like ever so often I would do some UWorld quizzes on my phone. Fast forward a couple of days, it is January 5th. Now this is a Tuesday, and I started thinking that maybe February 20th was too long, and I was like, maybe I should switch my date. So I went on Pearson and I was searching around to see what dates were still available, and I ended up finding one for January 16th, and I took it. On January 5th, I switched my NCLEX date for the second time to January 16th, which is over a month sooner than what I originally planned for February 20th. So at this point I was like, okay, that's in like a week and a half away. I need to start actually studying. So what I ended up doing was I brought back out this handy dandy book that they gave us, and I created my own study plan utilizing this. Do you want to talk about Mark Klimek? I don't know how to say his name, I'm sorry. I'm sure you've also heard of this dude and his study stuff. I did end up getting access to all of his recordings, and I also got 2 versions of the notes. So one version was like 15 pages or something like that, and then the second version of his notes was like 60 pages. And personally, I didn't even look up the one that was 60 pages because I was like, this is too much. So I do have that printed out, and I did write it up and highlight it while I was studying. Study plan, I broke it up into 5 days. And this is like no set schedule. This is what I made. I kind of looked at the thickness of every section and kind of was like, okay, this is good amount for one day, this is a good amount for another day, and just kind of grouped it like that. The first day, I wanted to cover med-surg and leadership and community, all 3 of those sections from this ATI book, and then I would do 200 UWorld questions covering just those sections. Now UWorld is really awesome because you can customize the test that you take by section and then by like topic, so you really can get like fancy with the questions that you're making. So from this point on, I was only doing UWorld based on the sections that I was covering that day. And essentially all that I did when I would cover these sections is I would just read it. That's literally it. I would take some notes on things that I thought was important to know. If it was like bigger systems, I would look up a YouTube video, like I did that with Addison's disease and Cushing syndrome. I felt like I retained a good amount from nursing school, so I really wasn't pressed to study too much, but I did want to refresh my memory from school because I felt like I should probably amp up my studying if I'm testing in a week. So day 1 was med-surg leadership community, 200 UWorld questions for that. Day 2, I covered pharmacology, any leftover med-surg that I had, or any big topics that I want to review for a second time. I looked over those sections in the Mark Klimek notes as well, and then I did 200 UWorld questions covering all of that. Day 3, I covered fundamentals, mental health, and then again more med-surg. So again, the topics that really would be coming up, like DI versus SIADH, or like Addison's and Cushing, or hyperthyroidism. So the big things that you should know the differences, those were the things that I was looking over like repeatedly, constantly over these first 3 days. Day 3, fundamentals, mental health, and then more med-surg, and then 200 UWorld questions for those sections. Day 4, I did maternal and newborn and all of pediatrics, and then 200 UWorld questions for that. And then day 5, I kept it really simple, and I just looked over lab values. I refreshed on drip rate calculation, and then any last minute review. So for instance, I looked over like crutches, how to use them up and down the stairs. I covered PPE, different precautions, basic stuff like that. That was my 5-day study. So this is my thing. Disregard this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It didn't end up being on those days, but this is essentially how I broke it up by the first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day. And then this is the version of the Mark Klimek notes that I had access to. This was like the 15-page one. This is just what I mean by like just kind of breaking it up. So this is hypothyroidism. I really looked over that stuff, and then Addison's disease, Cushing syndrome over here. So I just kind of picked and choose what I wanted to cover in here. It was just the bigger items. Okay, now that I've covered my little 5-day study plan that I created for myself, it's getting closer to testing day. So let me pull up my calendar because here's where it gets interesting. I had a friend who was also testing around the same time that I was, so we were starting to study together and just ask each other questions. If we were covering med-surg, we would literally just go through the book on different pages and just ask each other questions about stupid things that honestly helped retain information. We were studying together because we were taking our NCLEX like a day apart, so we were like on track for the same stuff. January 13th, I was studying with my friend. I was at her house, and we just kind of looked at each other and we were like, what if we changed our date for tomorrow? So we logged on to Pearson and we looked, and sure enough, there were 2 dates for the very next day at 8 a.m. to take the NCLEX. And at the time, it seemed like a really good idea because we were gonna get snow on like the day of my NCLEX. It was gonna be like really cold and it would have been a really hard drive. My car sucks in the snow. So I was like, you know, maybe I should just move it to tomorrow. Like, I feel like I'm ready. So on December 13th at 12:50 p.m., we both changed our date. Me for the 3rd time. Okay, this is the 3rd time I changed my NCLEX date, and I moved it to January 14th at 8 a.m., which was the very next day, not even 24 hours from when I changed it. And that is when I took my NCLEX. I went home, I showered, I think I worked out that night, and then I went to bed. Thursday morning, January 14th, I wake up at like 5 a.m. to give myself some time to kind of process what I was doing. I didn't end up eating because I was so nervous. I wasn't hungry, even though I probably should have eaten. I didn't. I did bring food to eat on the way there, but I didn't end up eating it. So kind of talking about the testing center the day of. My testing center, the building that it was in was a big office building and it's locked, so they didn't even open the doors until 7:30. So I got there at 7 a.m. So from 7 to 7:30, I just sat in my car and did UWorld on my phone. I wanted to do UWorld on my phone just because I feel like I test better when I'm a little bit warmed up. The doors opened at 7:30. I went in, I went to the bathroom. I kind of just sat in the bathroom for a little bit and just gathered myself, composed myself. Went upstairs. There's a bunch of paperwork that you have to read through and fill out. You have to do like a palm scan. They take your picture. In the testing center, you only bring in the key to your locker and your ID, and that's it. They palm scan your hand before you go in the testing center, and I was wearing a jacket and I had to flip my sleeves inside out so they can see that there's nothing in there, empty my pockets, and they go in there, they set up a test for you. They give you like a little sheet of paper that's laminated, so it's like kind of like a whiteboard, and then they give you a marker. There's a calculator on the computer. At my seat, you're in like a cubicle, so you can't like see around you. They did have headphones, and they had like noise canceling headphones as well. So I didn't use any of those. I didn't even use my whiteboard either. I was so nervous, but I kind of was just like, okay, my test is starting. They kind of go through some instructions to begin with, and then you start your test. And the second I hit that first question, I was like, bang, I was in the zone, and I took my test. I did not think the NCLEX was that hard. I think the only thing that took me by surprise was the amount of select all apply questions that I got. I knew that there would be a lot, but I truly did not believe it would be like 95% of my test. I remember I was like halfway through the test and I was just hitting next, and every single one I got next was a select all apply. Like, there was just no break. It was just boom, 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 no break, keep going. And I remember just stopping, looking at the ceiling and just like begging for mercy. I think that if you use UWorld, it is a lot easier than UWorld. I know people say different things about that, but I personally think it's a lot easier than UWorld. I don't want to sit here and tell you what kind of questions I had versus what kind of questions I didn't have, because I know the NCLEX is different for everyone, and I don't want to tell you that I didn't have this question and then you have it and you didn't study it, so I'm not going to do that. Now, I remember I stopped at question 70 and I just kind of gathered myself, because I was thinking that, okay, these could potentially be my last and final 5 questions. And I had like a little mental freak out, but I kept myself composed and I finished. And at question 75, I hit submit and it cut me off. And it was like, okay, you're done. This is your NCLEX. Congratulations, you finished. Here's your survey. The survey questions they're really hard. If that's what the NCLEX is gonna look like, I'm glad I took it now, because they were difficult. So yeah, I went in at 8 a.m. to take my test. I finished around like a little after 9. So I would say 75 questions I probably finished in less than an hour if we're deleting the time that it took me to finish the survey questions. So 75 questions, a little under an hour. Based on my UWorld performance, I think I average about 30 seconds a question. I really do not take a long time on them. If I don't know it, I don't know it, and I just go with my gut and I move on. Honestly, for the next 48 hours, I did absolutely nothing. I do want to talk about the Pearson trick. I know that there are some people who say it didn't work for them and they were told they passed but they failed, or they told them it failed but they actually passed. So I don't know how accurate it is, but I do know a lot of people utilize this trick. Essentially what it is when you go back into your Pearson account where you went to register for the NCLEX, if you hit register again, as if you're going to register for the NCLEX all over again, you go through the entire registration process and you have to input your credit card information again as if you're going to pay the $200. But what I ended up doing is I switched the CVC code, like my security code, and I made it something different, and I changed the expiration date, kept the same card number, but I changed it so just in case I did fail, I didn't want it to charge me like right that second. And then I hit submit, and then the pop-up that you want to see that tells you that you passed is the one that says, our records indicate that you have recently scheduled this exam. Another registration cannot be made at this time. So if you get that pop-up after you hit submit, that is your indicator that you passed. If something comes up regarding your payment, that your payment info is wrong, your security code is wrong, your CVC is wrong, that means that this Pearson website is trying to charge your card because you failed, is trying to register for the test because you failed. So if it says anything regarding your payment, that's what they consider a fail. I think what I heard, a good rule of thumb is that if your questions are progressively getting harder, I think that's a good indicator that you're doing good on the test. On January 16th, I went and I paid like the $7 and something cents to see your unofficial results, and sure enough, I got a pass. That is honestly my NCLEX stories. I really only studied for 5 days. I truly think that the reason I didn't study as much as other people study is because I just retained really well from school. I think I studied really hard during school so that I learned it really well the first time and it just stuck. As far as these notes, I found them on TikTok. If I can find it again, I will link them down below. I can link the 15-page one that I got and then the 60-page one that I got. I don't know if I still have it saved, so I'm sorry if there's nothing in the description box, but you can probably also find this online. They're everywhere. But the last couple of things I wanted to talk about before I finish this video was some just general tips that I have for taking the NCLEX. So I'm just going to go through them and talk about them really quickly. But the first one is to treat your select all apply like a true false. And I think that this is so important, and I think you should get really comfortable doing, because the NCLEX is a lot of select all apply. Treat it like a true false. So I look at every answer choice, and if that statement is true, then I keep it noted. If it's false, I cross it out. Which leads me to my second tip: go with your instincts. I don't think that you should be sitting on a question for longer than a minute, because at that point I think that you looked at it for too long and you're probably overthinking, and you're probably inserting information that's not in the question itself, and you're probably going to get yourself into trouble. If you need longer, then you need longer, but I absolutely do not think you should change your answers unless you are willing to take a bullet for that answer. That is how sure you are that it is correct. Because I think that there's like some statistic out there that your first guess is almost always right, and then you change it and then it's wrong. The second one I learned from the Mark Klimek notes, and I've also seen other people talking about that, and I was also told this in nursing school, is to look for those absolute words. So if your answer choice has one of these absolute words, more than likely or not, the answer is wrong. So these absolutes are words like all, always, must, none, never, only. Those kind of words are your absolutes, and they're probably going to be wrong. So just keep an eye out for questions like that and answer choices like that. Just read what it says, and more often than not, it's probably not right. Another thing I learned from the Mark Klimek notes, and then also throughout nursing school, is that if two of your answers are similar, they're probably both wrong. Think about it. If it says multiple choice, only one can be right. They're not going to put two answers that are like the exact same, just worded differently. They can't both be right. You know what I mean? If two answers are opposites, one of them is probably right. So just kind of look at those. Think about the most therapeutic response. Now, I hate to say this, but you have to kind of think about what is the most NCLEX answer. I don't even know if you know what that means, but I feel like if you made it through nursing school, you kind of know what I mean. There's answers that are going to be like, okay, as a nurse, this is probably what I would do because that makes the most sense. But in NCLEX world, that's not what you would do. So just kind of get in the mindset of NCLEX style questions, which is why practice tests and practice questions are so important because it kind of gets you used to what they want. But essentially, the most therapeutic response. What is best for your patient? What does putting your patient first look like for that question? That's a good just mindset to get yourself in just in general. Think about it and answer the question. Now for UWorld, I did every single darn question in that stupid test bank. I think it's like 2,190 something questions in there, and I did every single one of them. Every single one of them. And I did do both assessments, which are 100 questions. I did them both a couple of days spread apart, like a week before my test. I took both of those. And that is what I used to take the NCLEX. Now, I know this journey is going to look different for everyone. There are so many resources out there to help you study. I've heard Kaplan has a really good study book. I've heard, I know ATI has tests, so if your school utilizes ATI, I think there are practice tests for every section that you can take, and I'm almost positive ATI has their own question bank that you can access. I personally could never figure out how to do it, so I didn't use it, but I know that there is an option for it. I don't think I have anything else to say. If you have any more questions about anything that I talked about in this video, I'm more than happy to answer them for you. But that's really all that I have to say. Yeah, if I can find the Mark Klimek notes that I got access to, I will link them. If I cannot, if it's not in the description box, assume that I couldn't find it anymore. Use your resources, guys. YouTube is awesome. I utilize YouTube so much throughout my nursing school journey and when I was studying for the NCLEX. So if you're really struggling with a topic, look it up on YouTube. I guarantee there's probably a video about it. It's probably going to explain it a lot better than your professors or your lectures or anything that you have already seen, and it's probably going to help you learn it and retain it a lot better. I'm so sorry this video was like an hour long, but there was just a lot to talk about and I wanted to make sure that it covered everything I wanted to cover. Leave your request for nursing school videos if you want me to go back and do those for you. I totally can. I do have a list of videos moving forward that I want to do. I'm going to try to be consistent with this again. Hopefully I can stick with it now that I have a job. I just want to quickly say, if you failed, please, please, please do not be discouraged. I know so many people who didn't pass. I've heard so many stories of people who didn't pass the first time. It's not an indicator of how well of a nurse you're going to be. The NCLEX is hard. It is hard. I think I studied and I did everything that I could so that I felt comfortable taking the NCLEX, and that's why it was just a breeze for me. Not everyone's like that. Take it again. Study, learn from it. They do send you a progress report from what you did on the NCLEX. I don't know what that entails, but I think it kind of runs down the kind of questions that you got wrong, what subjects you're doing a little bit lower in that you could use some studying in. So pick your head up, take it again, pass it. Just do not be discouraged. I promise you it's more common than you think. That's all that I really wanted to say about that. But yeah, leave your questions down below, any video requests for me that you have. I'm so excited to be back. I will see you in my next video.